everyone, my name is Pedro. I work for SingleStore, former MemSQL. And today I'll be talking a bit about more than just specific elements like Shannon announced, more on how SingleStore has been using our MCP server to onboard users, either existing ones, so to help them guide them in our platform, or to introduce new ones to SingleStore. And I'll be sharing a little demo if we have time, and the lessons that we actually learned by using MCP in production. So firstly, a little bit about myself. I'm a full-time software engineer, part-time sports lover. My MCP contribution have been with SingleStore MCP server, of course. I have organized multiple events in Portugal, be driving the MCP community in Portugal, and organized the very first MCP meetup in Lisbon. And I've also contributed to the Python SDK, which was the one that we actually use on SingleStore MCP server. And I would also have to introduce you a bit about SingleStore, or former MemSQL. So we're basically a data platform that we're good for both transactional, analytical, and also search, so semantic search, vector, columns, and all that AI compatible stuff. We're available on-prem, clouds, and in hybrid environments, and specifically on clouds. On the cloud, we have our cloud platform, which we call and this will be important because I'll distinguish the onboarding both on the database, so the technology underneath, and on the online platform, okay? So how did we usually do onboarding at SingleStore? Well, it's not very different from most of the companies. We also, of course, have documentation. This will mean every piece of text that could lead the users to know the step-by-step guides to help them learn about the database, our own platform available on our websites. Of course, we also provide some webinars, YouTube videos, LinkedIn, and social media. So basically web tutorials and resources are also available to onboard new users. These are mainly specific for smaller use cases, so basically demos and stuff, not production ready things like documentation. And we also explore product-led growth, or PLG, for our online platform, so for Ilias. We have some multiple ways to allow users to provide us feedback, whether we interact us within in-application chatbot or a button to send feedback. So this is it's a way we onboard users because it's tested out. It's what the standard is. It's what it's out there, and it's scalable. You know, you add a new feature, you write a new documentation page, and boom, put it on the web page. Now it's available. Everyone can try it out. Do while promoting it. You do online courses. You do a webinar. It's very scalable, low-touch onboarding. Users can move at their own pace, so they'll be at home, at the office, just try them out. And the documentation, as I said, it's public. But there's some also trade-offs with this approach. So as you grow, and SingleStore has been piling with some new products, we get much more documentation for the users to actually browse, and this can be, the users can end up lost in the documentation, right? Documents are static in the sense that most companies like we do have people specifically to change the docs, but as the documentation grows, they tend to move slower, right? So if you actually change something, the time to that change be reflected on the documentation, it's not immediately, it grows with time. And there's also, if a customer for some reason faces a problem while reading the documentation they don't understand, or the problem that they're facing is not present there, they would probably open a ticket with us, and this will lead to a high latency customer service process. So besides this general onboarding problems that we've seen. Specifically for SingleStore, we also face in the world of LLMs. If you're like us and you have a proprietary engine or you have a closed source product, you would find that LLMs don't have that much information about your product, right? It's sometimes they will hallucinate when the user is actually asking something specifically for your own product, and it's easier for, in our case, other open source technology like Postgres or MySQL, for users to start to onboard and start using this technology because it's publicly available. There's a lot of content out on the internet for it. So this was one of the problems that we identified. And also being a more technical database, it's harder to write and optimize queries without deep knowledge about the documentation or the technology itself. For Ilias, we also identified that the users would switch between the UI and then go to documentation to try to understand it. We would put tutorials on it, but then the tutorials, we'd have to think about the messages to not be confused. There's plenty of things that could confuse users at the end. So for that, we developed our own MCP server. The MCP server allows users not only to interact with the SingleStore services, so it's not only an API wrapper, it allows users to communicate directly with their own database and try to reply to some doubts that they might have when using SingleStore as technology when they're writing SQL code, basically. We went with passwordless login via a SingleStore account. The users can either input their credential on a web page that will open up once you spin the MCP server for the first time, and they can also authenticate themselves with the OAuth provider that they choose to log in on the SingleStore account. I'll just go briefly through it's actually in the MCP server, but we basically divided the tools on groups. I'll explain why that's a good thing later on after the demo. We also are exploring resources. For those of you who don't know, I skip the tools because I would assume that most of you already are familiar with what MCP tools are. But for MCP resources, they're the static part of MCP. You can actually provide a document, a database record, any byte stream that you would like to provide more context to your LLM. And also predefined prompts. So this will be prompt templates to help the user do something. So the user can freely type some prompts, or you as an MCP developer can provide a template to help them guide on specific workflows. So now let's hope that the demo gods are with me today. So I'll be showing you a quick demo on how you can actually start using our Drizzle driver. So for those of you who don't know Drizzle, it's a TypeScript ORM. It's getting more and more popular nowadays, and it has connections to multiple databases like Postgres, MySQL, or even with database providers like Neon or PlanetScale. So if I was a new user and would like to integrate, either I already have an application running on Drizzle, or I want to migrate, or I want to start a new one from scratch using SingleStore and Drizzle, I would just search on Google, let's say Drizzle and SingleStore. I would see Drizzle official documentation page on how to getting started, and will follow the steps. I would see on SingleStore as well the same thing, and we even have a blog post to guide the users. So it's, as you can see, although it's pretty straightforward, you can also see that there's a ton of documentation, a ton of resources, and this it can easily get outdated, or the information cannot match. So it's good to have a single source of truth like the MCP server. So for this, I'm going to, let me see if, okay, yeah. I hope you can see both the prompt and what's on the screen. So what you're seeing there, it's the resource. I fetched it here. I'm using VS Code, Copilot, and I fetched it by going to Add Context, MCP resources, and you will be displayed with the resources that the MCP server already has. I chose this one, and as you can see down here, it has the markdown file. This is basically a markdown file. There's not much science to it. And for you to actually have a sense, I have only the MCP, the SingleStore MCP server selected for this demo. Wait. Okay, yeah, now I do. Sorry. Okay. So I wrote, already have a prompt here. We will create an e-commerce express app with two endpoints. Let's keep it simple, with Drizzle and SingleStore. I asked them, so as a good practice, to use placeholders for the credentials, because he will basically create a .env file with the database URL so that he can connect. And from a previous experience, I decided to say, yeah, use TSX instead of TS Node just to run the project, okay? So I'm using ChatGPT 4.1 for this. And he started out of the box, started to create a source directory. He knows, so the cool thing about this is that most LLMs know Drizzle because it's open source, right? But they don't know SingleStore that well, as I've mentioned. So by providing this markdown file, this resource that we have available on our MCP server, I give them context, not just what SingleStore is, but also a follow guide for LLMs on how to set up a project using Drizzle and how to work with Drizzle and SingleStore for specific details specific for SingleStore. And as you can see, he's now on the step that he's going to install the dependencies. We can go to here and say that, yeah, actually, this is a placeholder, as you can see. Is installed the dependencies. Awesome. So far, so good. Is installing some things to run this locally. And let's just wait for it to finish its thought. But I can, while it's finishing that, I can, as you can see, I just have to change the .env file because we have the database URL here. We can just see that there's like only two tables that we are creating, and we have to apply these migrations as well. Okay, so the project is set. Good. I'm going here. Don't worry about the credentials. I'll delete the workspace later after the presentation. But I've copied the database URL, and I'll just replace it here. Okay, and now I'll say apply the migrations. Okay, so I'm telling, so he knows what it means, right? He's actually going to run DrizzleKit generate and DrizzleKit push to generate the migration. So this will create a SQL file with the create table statements, and then he's going to actually create the tables on the database. So let's wait for it to run. Seems good, yeah? Let's quickly check that out. So this is Ilias, the cloud version. We're going to the SQL editor. We are here, and let's say show tables. Awesome, we have two tables here. But does this actually work? So is this, so let's run the script npm run dev. Seems to work. Let's go to localhost 3000. Okay, seems to be working. We have no products. If I wanted to, I can say add some products via drizzle seed. Let's see if this works. This, if you're not familiar with seeds, it's a feature on Drizzle where you can actually create pseudo random values to populate your database. This is great for testing, okay? And is seeding the products, I don't know. It's basically populating the products table at the moment. As you can see, I only left my IDE once, and it was to grab my connection. So if I have the connection on a environment variable anywhere else, I don't even had to leave the IDE. Okay. It's taking a while. If it's taking a bit. Okay. I'll just stop, restart the server. Let's see if this works. Yeah, as you can see, boom, we have some demo products out here, and out of the box in for like 5 minutes, we have an app built with Drizzle and SingleStore up and running, because we basically added a markdown or a resource on our MCP server. So now quickly going back to the presentation, what did we learn from using MCP to onboard users and using it in production at SingleStore? So the first thing, the first lesson that I would like to say to you is that you should, as both engineer, as a product manager, you should, the same way as you think about the product itself and not how you built it, you have to define concrete use cases or concrete flows. So instead of just wrapping your MCP server around an API, do try to see what type of flows, what are the use cases that you actually want your users to use your platform, and build instruction, use the MCP server to guide the LLM through those specific use cases. Also, adapt documentation to agents. So currently we have these HTML pages for humans to read. We are now starting to see Markdown as the standard for LLM documentation, and we have been transforming the HTML pages to Markdown as well, and adding the LLM.txt to our website, so LLMs can actually scrape, and also you can feed this as resource to your LLM on your local machine. And finally, if you're on our enterprise level, please take your MCP server remote. There's plenty of advantages. I'm sure that throughout the day, many people are going to point them out to you. But we've identified mainly you can add better analytics, more accurate analytics, and observability, because you don't have to expose your API key locally. You can just keep it on the backend, and also it's easier for you to patch and control the version that the users are using. So for the next steps for SingleStore with MCP, besides what we have done so far, we, as I already mentioned, are making the documentation more LLM friendly. We are indexing documentation for better search, so to help LLMs to actually browse through our documentation and be aware of what SingleStore is as a product. We will going to improve the experience of directly accessing the user database through MCP tools to provide more context for a specific data that the user wants, like now, what I'm referring to, it's basically if the user has an e-commerce and wants to do some operation on a specific user or a user habits, is going to query the database and provide the LLM. This user usually buys this type of products. Please do something. And also to add more resources. So I've showed you, we only have Drizzle for now, but we also have Python SDK, TypeScript SDK, and other development tools. We would like to have resources for that as well. And on the Elio side, expand the MCP server not only for what you've seen, which is basically management, database management, but also we just yesterday launched Aura, or AI cloud services there. So we would like to have support for that as well. Add more Elias-related tools to gradually allow LLMs to actually manage the flow for yourself instead of just listing things. Actually resume workspaces, access databases with the safeguards and stuff. And continue close collaboration and getting a lot of feedback from the customers to improve the product. That was all. Thank you for listening to me. I'll be here all day, so feel free to talk if you want to talk about either best experiences, product onboarding, or just discuss the MCP. Thank you.